Hello and welcome to Hoteliers Voice Season 5. In this episode, we're looking at generating demand in secondary cities with Neetu Mistry, the Chief Commercial Officer from Cycas Hospitality. We'll be exploring challenges and opportunities of working with branded properties, investing in primary and secondary cities, carving a market and generating demand, and tips for clever marketing and shrewd revenues. Neetu is Chief Commercial Officer responsible for driving revenues at Cycas' growing hotel portfolio. She has developed commercial strategies for hotels across the UK and Europe and working with both independent hotels as well as global brands, including the Marriott, IHG, Hilton, Hyatt, Radisson, and Accor. Since joining Cycas in 2018, Neetu has built Europe's strongest hospitality commercial function.
Hoteliers Voice from Travel Market Life, exploring opportunity in hospitality with Ryan Haynes. Hear from the people making a difference, from revenue to operations, marketing to digitalization. Learn the thinking behind their decisions.
Hello there, Neetu. It's great to have you here on our Hoteliers Voice Season 5. Thank you so much for joining us. To start off with, please tell us a little bit more about Cycas and the type of market you work in.
Ryan, thank you so much for that introduction, and I'm so glad to be here with you and doing this podcast. So from my perspective, to share with you a bit of an insight around Cycas Hospitality, we are a third-party hotel management company. Like you said, we work with both independent brands, but also the global brands that you mentioned. And we specialize in running hotels and operating hotels across Europe. So that stretches from everything from your traditional hotel to more luxury lifestyle hotels. And also a bit of our speciality lies within the extended stay hotel environment as well. So thank you for inviting me, and I'm excited to be here.
No problem. I mean, how big's your portfolio at the moment? How many different properties are you working with at Cycas?
So it's always hard to keep up with this question because our development team and also just in terms of our growth has been exponential over the last few years. At my last count, and I'm sure someone will correct me, we have around 50 hotels that we are operating and that are in pipeline due to open in the next year or so. So we've got quite a large portfolio spanning kind of across the UK and across some of the major cities in Europe. We have our first hotel opening in Luxembourg this year. And we also have our first hotel opening in Switzerland. So yeah, it keeps us busy.
Very exciting times. And you and I met at Hospace 2024, where we had a panel discussion looking at marketing and revenue tactics. And we'll be coming to that towards the end of this conversation about your top tips that you can offer our listeners. But first, I really wanted to explore a bit more about, working with such a range of different branded properties. And that are sort of taken from an independent standpoint as well. What are the challenges that you find working with the big global brands?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. And I think it's always a really balanced view when you work across the spectrum of the brands, but also have independent properties that you have the benefit of managing yourself and the freedom of what that brings. I think, there's big opportunities with the global brands depending on various commercial points such as the location, the product, the demand drivers in the market, and what you're really trying to achieve for those owners. But along with that, you have, I guess, the other side of it where there's the benefits and the strength, which can become sometimes the challenges. So it's really great to work in an environment where you have standards. These are brilliant from a guest perspective. You have operational guidelines, which are, again, great from a consistency perspective, a support perspective. But sometimes these can limit your flexibility, especially when you enter into, I guess, the spaces that require a bit more design, a bit more innovation, are a bit more kind of out of the box in terms of what the customer is looking for. That being said, a lot of the global brands are now aligning with this type of thinking, and you see a lot more kind of these lifestyle brands appearing across the board, which do sort of give you that flexibility in that space to kind of manage around the guest experience, and balancing, I guess, the owner expectations, which from an investment perspective are a huge key part of the decisions to go with a brand, with the brand requirements, and then with the guest experience. So I think there is an opportunity always to balance all of those different stakeholders, to balance all those views of what you really want from that asset, and then make the decision on whether that brand is limiting to you or whether it actually brings an opportunity that you wouldn't have in the independent space.
I mean, it's fascinating to see the diversification of product within the big global brands. Marriott itself, I've stayed in a few different of its products now and didn't even realize it was a Marriott property until you look at the fine print. So it's fascinating to see that you can really bring quite a boutique, independent feel to some of these global brands. And you and I are having this conversation before the podcast, and what really drew my interest was the work that you've been doing in maybe not so much the primary cities, but some of the secondary cities, particularly in Slough. You've worked on two properties in that market now, which I'd like you to explain a bit about. That has really identified huge opportunity for your business at Cycas, but also for setting up branded properties in secondary cities.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good case study, I guess, of how we operate as a business across kind of various markets. I mean, it's always great fun to be in the capital cities of London and Paris and Amsterdam as we are. But, reality, there is business cases to be had for some of the primary and secondary locations that we operate in. So Slough is a great investment case and case study for us in a, I guess, secondary location. We opened two hotels next to each other. So they're actually in a joint building in the heart of Slough, actually in the middle of the pandemic. So this was a journey in itself. So a really strong business case for us to kind of open these properties, knowing, I guess, where the demand drivers, as I touched on, were coming from, but B, also what the council wanted to do with the regeneration of the location, and being able to understand and complement this with the opening of our two properties. And that really created the foundation of then how we took that journey with the hotel, where it is today, how we've made that hotel a real success, both from a community perspective, but also from an investor perspective. And really be able to deliver those stable returns that, I guess, weren't all just about the short term kind of cash wins, but really around the long term project. Because I guess what has come over time now is the introduction of the Elizabeth line, which has improved the connectivity into this secondary city, the returning of businesses that have come and invested within that, I guess, borough or market, with what the council are doing with the regeneration. So I think, our approach really for these kind of locations are around kind of embedding ourselves within those local markets, those local communities, really feeling part of that story, and really being able to match our investor aspirations with the aspirations of the location, the community, and of course the hotel as well, and the team that work there.
Now, from Slough, and you've got a lot of new properties opening, as you mentioned at the beginning of this interview. What have you learned about the opportunity out there for a company like yours?
I think it's really interesting because post-COVID, there's been a lot of assets that have kind of had to rethink, and hotels that have had to rethink kind of their future within certain markets. Investors have had to rethink whether those assets are still worth kind of keeping in the state that they are. And actually, what it has forced a bit to happen is that the supply growth has increased significantly in most markets post the pandemic. Everybody was kind of keeping their new openings very muted over that period for obvious reasons. But that's kind of expanded quite a bit in the last year or so. The other part of it is as well that a lot of hotels have had significant renovations, refurbishments, because customer expectations are so different now to what they were a long time ago. And you can really see those hotels that don't capture the opportunity because they're not as good quality, or they are dated, or they're no longer relevant to what the customer is looking for. And I think those really struggle. And so, to answer your question, I guess, when we are carving out new opportunities in whether it be new markets or existing markets, not only are the ideas around what will generate the demand and what segments and what areas will it come from, but a large part of it is formed around the quality of the asset. What are we positioning ourselves at? How do we see that guest service, that guest element kick into? It's brilliant to have a shiny new hotel, but do we deliver on that experience that the customer is experiencing or wanting to experience? So I think there's a whole rounded view. We opened like 5 hotels in 3 different cities during the pandemic. So I feel like we've got a bit of a blueprint now of kind of how to go into these locations and open hotels. But I have to say, even from a commercial perspective, to really get the success that we want and we need, we have to have and make sure that whole operational and guest experience is tied up as part of that success, because any one of those elements not achieving can make the whole plan kind of dwindle a bit.
Excellent. Now, let's have a throwback to our chat at Hospace 2024. That topic was all around clever marketing and shrewd revenue tactics. So, Neetu, can you share with us what are your top tips?
You're testing my memory, Ryan. But yeah, I think if I cast my mind back, we spoke a lot about kind of what's really important from a revenue management and marketing perspective to really have that collaboration and drive the performance. And I think there's always a perception that it's one or the other, and it depends always who you talk to. But looking at it from a commercial lens, it's a real collaborative and collective effort, especially now where I guess one of the tips is around looking at your channel optimization and distribution. We spoke about this. This is no longer about just managing, do you take more bookings direct or via the OTAs or different segments, but there's a real opportunity for the marketing team to support in meta search optimization, mobile optimization, ads, digital marketing. So I would say that is one big tip, which is around channel optimization and distribution. Really upselling and cross-selling opportunities, with the caveat of there are other revenue streams in most properties than just the bedrooms. So really looking at like where hotels are now experiencing in today's market a kind of, I guess, a cap, I guess, in terms of what their ADR growth should or can be. They have to look at different revenue streams to kind of say, where are we going to get the revenue growth for with the increasing cost pressures that we're facing across any market really and across the industry? So definitely a large part of that. We always talk about data, and I think that's really important, really effective data, performance data, as well as guest feedback data, I think are a good marry. I talk about collaboration, and this is a good example of something where multiple functions can work together. Data isn't just about like numbers, but also feedback, reviews. And I think, how do hotels utilize that? I think that's 3, right? But I guess if I was going to pick 2 more, I think it's around understanding and being true to yourself around what your hotel proposition is. Are you a full service? Are you a limited service? And do you stand true to that in both your output that you give for your customers, but also whether it's your price positioning or your offering? Is that really key? And are you true to your price positioning as well as your, I guess, what you stand for? And then I would just say, like online presence, branding, all of the things that I guess comprise around online, I guess presence is the right word. So social media, your online digital footprint. How are you making sure that this is relevant, up to date, and really informative to those, whether they're researching or looking to book with you? We know that no one instantly researches and then automatically books, but there are platforms where you can do that. You can do that on Instagram, you can do that through other platforms as well. So it's just being really smart about what your online presence is and how you want to kind of maximize that. I think that's 5.
Yes, you did manage to get to 5, and I think they all tied in really nicely to one another, and hopefully give people a very good picture of how they can make the most of both their hotel and what they offer, what they're trying to show to the guests, but then make that visible across all the channels. Which, as you say, there are a multitude of channels now you need to be on top of, and it can be quite head spinning. So it's certainly worth working with a partner to help ensure that you've got those things in place. Neetu, it was wonderful to chat to you today. Thank you ever so much for exploring more around how you can generate demand in secondary cities and build out your market as a business. It was really fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. It was good to chat to you as well. Appreciate your time.
Well, that was Neetu Mistry, the Chief Commercial Officer from Cycas Hospitality. You can check out our other episodes from Hoteliers Voice Season 5. Our first went live with Alessandra Leone, so please check that out on your podcast channel. Or our previous series are also still available. I'm your host, Ryan Haynes. Thanks ever so much for listening. Check you soon.
For more, go to Travel Market Life. The music sensation by Zach Nelson is reproduced under license from Storyblocks. Travel Market Life is a Haynes Marcoms digital marketing agency production, serving the travel and technology industries.